The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Federation stretched before me, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 3 suns through the panoramic windows. Supreme Commander Valix Thorn stood at the central podium, his scaled skin gleaming with an air of absolute authority that made even the most seasoned warriors straighten their postures. "Captain Krex Starweaver," he called out, his voice resonating through the chamber. "Your reconnaissance report on the newly discovered species. These humans." I stepped forward, my datapad clutched tightly in my 4-fingered hand. The weight of 200 council members' gazes pressed down on my shoulders. "Yes, Supreme Commander. My fleet has observed their civilization for the past 3 lunar cycles." And your assessment, Commander? Thorn's mandibles clicked with barely concealed amusement. "Are they worthy of joining our glorious federation?" A quiet chuckle rippled through the chamber. I cleared my throat, projecting my voice with military precision. "The humans are peculiar, Supreme Commander. Their physical form is remarkably inefficient, no natural armor, no secondary respiratory system, limited sensory capabilities." "Hey, Commander," Thorn's laugh boomed across the chamber. "No backup organs? How do they survive?" "They compensate with artificial means, sir. Their technological advancement is notable, considering their limitations." Commander Thorn waved a dismissive hand. "Technology built by weak hands crumbles at the first test of strength, Captain. Continue." "Their military forces are particularly interesting," I offered, scrolling through my observations. "Despite their biological constraints, they maintain substantial armed forces. They seem almost eager for conflict." The Supreme Commander's expression shifted to one of predatory interest. Eager for conflict, yet bound by such fragile forms. Perhaps they need a lesson in their place in the galactic hierarchy. "Sir, if I may," I hesitated, remembering the unsettling patterns I'd observed. "Their historical records show an unusual propensity for." "For what, Captain? Hiding? Surrendering? Running away?" Commander Thorn's mandibles spread in what passed for a smile among our species. "Look around you, Starweaver. The Federation spans 3 galactic arms. We've brought peace through strength to 1,000 worlds. What could these soft-skinned, single-hearted creatures possibly teach us about warfare?" The council chamber erupted in laughter. I forced myself to join in, but my inner eyelids flickered with concern. Something about the humans' behavior didn't fit our usual patterns of species development. Their cities bristled with defenses, their populations trained constantly for combat, their entertainment centered around conflict and victory. "Prepare a formal assessment," Commander Thorn ordered, already turning away. "Mark them as a Class 3 civilization, primitive but potentially useful for basic labor. We'll begin integration procedures within the standard time frame." "Yes, Supreme Commander," I bowed deeply, but my mind raced with the memories of human warships I'd observed during my reconnaissance. There was something in their design that spoke of experience, of countless battles fought and won. As I left the council chamber, my secondary hearts beating in anxious rhythm, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were making a terrible mistake. The humans might lack our physical advantages, but there was a glint in their eyes that reminded me of the galaxy's apex predators, patient, calculating, and absolutely certain of victory. The first official contact with human military forces was almost laughably anticlimactic. Their flagship, a vessel they called USS Intrepid, appeared small and crude compared to our gleaming warships. Commander Thorn had assigned me to lead the diplomatic delegation, though we all knew it was merely a formality before the inevitable conquest. "Look at their pitiful life support systems," Lieutenant Zara Brightclaw sneered beside me as we approached in our shuttle. "They need to manufacture their own atmosphere just to survive in space. How primitive." Our delegation docked with their ship through an airlock that seemed unnecessarily complicated. The human honor guard that greeted us stood rigidly at attention, and I noticed their breathing apparatus, standard issue for their kind, even within their own vessels. Their commander, a female they called Rebecca Morrison, stepped forward with what they considered a formal salute. "Welcome aboard the Intrepid," she said, her single set of vocal cords producing what our translators interpreted as respectful tones. "We're honored to host representatives of the Galactic Federation." I towered over her, my cybernetically enhanced frame making me 3 times her mass. "The honor is ours, Commander Morrison. Though I must admit we expected something more substantial from Earth's premier vessel." Her expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. "Size isn't everything, Captain Starweaver. Would you care for a tour?" What followed was a procession through cramped corridors that seemed designed for combat rather than comfort. Every compartment could be sealed, every system had redundancies, every crew member was armed. It was almost amusing, like watching cubs playing at war. "Their weapon systems are practically obsolete," Lieutenant Brightclaw transmitted privately to me. "Their armor wouldn't withstand a single burst from our pulse cannons." I nodded, but something about their crew's behavior caught my attention. They moved with practiced precision, their actions suggesting countless drills and preparations. In their training rooms, I watched their soldiers practicing combat maneuvers, despite their obvious physical disadvantages. "Impressive dedication," I commented to Commander Morrison, trying to sound diplomatic. She smiled. "Humans have a long history of overcoming limitations, Captain. We adapt, we improvise, we overcome." "Of course," I replied smoothly. Though sometimes, adaptation merely delays the inevitable. Back on our command ship, I compiled my report for Supreme Commander Thorne. The humans' military capabilities were exactly as our initial scans had suggested, hopelessly outmatched by Federation standards. Their ships were slower, their weapons weaker, their defenses inadequate. Victory would be swift and absolute. Yet that night, in my private quarters, I found myself reviewing historical footage from Earth's previous conflicts. Their battles seemed chaotic, brutal, lacking the elegant precision of Federation warfare. But there was something else, something that made my scales prickle with unease. These humans fought with a tenacity that bordered on madness, continuing long past the point where any rational species would surrender. "Initiate conquest preparations," Commander Thorne's orders flashed across my screen. "Estimated resistance minimal. Expected casualties negligible." I acknowledged the orders, pushing aside my doubts. After all, what threat could these fragile creatures possibly pose to the greatest military force the galaxy had ever known? Their weakness was evident, their defeat certain. If only we had known then how wrong we were. The battle was supposed to be a simple demonstration of Federation power. 3,000 warships against a mere handful of human vessels defending their colony on Mars. Our victory was so certain that Commander Thorne authorized live broadcasts across Federation space. "Begin the attack," his orders came through as our fleet moved into position. "Show these primitives the price of resistance." The first volley from our pulse cannons streaked across space, a dazzling display of superior firepower. But something was wrong. The human ships scattered in patterns we had never seen before, breaking formation in ways that defied traditional combat logic. "Captain Starweaver," a voice cut through my tactical display. "This is Admiral Amanda Blake of the Earth Defense Force. Last chance to withdraw." I actually laughed. "Admiral Blake, your bravery is admirable, but surely you see the futility of..." The rest of my words died in my throat as the humans launched their counterattack. Their ships, which we had dismissed as primitive, suddenly split apart into smaller attack craft. Hundreds of them, swarming through our carefully arranged formations. "Impossible," Lieutenant Brightclaw shouted. Their ships were not designed for such transformations. But they were. The humans had deliberately presented us with false intelligence, showing us only what they wanted us to see. Now their true capabilities were being revealed in the most brutal way possible. All ships maintained formation, I ordered, but it was already too late. The human vessels were inside our defensive screens, too close for our primary weapons to target effectively. They struck with weapons we had never encountered, electromagnetic pulses that bypassed our shields entirely. "This is Admiral Blake again," the human commander's voice was eerily calm. "Those were our Level 1 countermeasures. Would you like to see Level 2? Before I could respond, a new horror unfolded. The human ships released what appeared to be simple missiles. Our point defense systems destroyed many, but those that got through by the 7 moons of Salax, those that got through simply refused to die. "Sir," my tactical officer's voice cracked with panic. "The missiles are regenerating. They're evolving in real time, adapting to our defenses." I watched in disbelief as the supposedly primitive projectiles changed their composition, their trajectories, their very nature. Each time we developed a countermeasure, they adapted within seconds. It was warfare on a scale we had never imagined. "Status report," Commander Thorne's voice boomed through the command channel. "We've lost 30% of the fleet," I reported, my scales cold with dread. "Their weapons, sir, they're using technologies we've never seen." adaptive systems, quantum entanglement matrices, something they call nanoswarm technology. A massive explosion lit up my viewport as one of our dreadnoughts succumbed to the human assault. Its death throes were spectacular, but what happened next defied explanation. The debris from the explosion seemed to come alive, transforming into countless microsatellites that began attacking our remaining ships. By the cosmic core, Lieutenant Brightclaw whispered. They weaponized the debris field. They planned for this. They planned for everything. Admiral Blake's voice returned, still maddeningly composed. Captain Starweaver, your fleet is at 40% strength and falling. We can continue this demonstration, or you can withdraw. The choice is yours. I looked at my tactical display, watching as more of our ships fell to the humans' impossible strategies. They fought like no species we had ever encountered, combining technologies in ways that shouldn't work, yet somehow did. Their smaller, weaker ships danced through our formation like predators among prey. All ships, I transmitted, my voice heavy with the weight of what I was about to say. Initiate emergency withdrawal procedures. Full retreat. As our remaining ships fled the battlefield, I received one final transmission from Admiral Blake. Next time, bring your A game, Captain. This was just our warm-up. The implications of those words would haunt the Federation for years to come. We had not just lost a battle, we had lost our understanding of what was possible in warfare. The humans hadn't merely defeated us, they had rewritten the rules of engagement themselves. After our humiliating defeat at Mars, Commander Thorne assigned me to head a special investigation unit. Our mission? Understand how we had so catastrophically underestimated humanity's military capabilities. The Federation's Central Archive granted us access to Earth's historical records, and what we discovered sent waves of terror through our highest military ranks. Sir, you need to see this. Lieutenant Brightclaw called me over to her research station. These humans, they've been fighting continuously for their entire recorded history. I leaned over her shoulder, watching footage from something called World War II. The scale of destruction was beyond comprehension. They did this to themselves? Their own species? Yes, but that's not the terrifying part. She pulled up another file. Look how their technology evolved during just 6 years of conflict. They went from primitive propeller aircraft to jet engines, from basic radio to early computers, from simple bombs to atomic weapons. The more we dug, the more disturbing the picture became. Humans didn't just adapt to warfare, they thrived on it. Every conflict pushed their innovation further, faster. Where other species sought to avoid war, humans had turned it into a science. Their Cold War was particularly fascinating, our cultural specialist, Officer Nexus Prime, reported. Two major powers, locked in a conflict where direct confrontation meant mutual destruction. So they fought through proxies, through technology, through sheer economic might. They called it a war, but not a single shot was fired between the main competitors. And their space program, I asked. Born from the same conflict, Nexus confirmed. They turned weapons of war into tools of exploration. Their first rockets were designed to deliver nuclear payloads. Instead, they used them to reach their moon. Our research revealed a species that turned every weakness into strength. No natural armor? They built tanks and battleships. No innate ability to fly? They conquered the skies with aircraft that could break the sound barrier. Limited lifespan? They accelerated their technological development to compensate. Captain Lieutenant Brightclaw's voice shook as she brought up another file. I found their contingency plans. Even before they knew about alien life, they were preparing for interstellar war. Every science fiction story, every space opera, they weren't just entertainment. They were thought experiments, strategy sessions, preparation for the challenges ahead. The implications struck me like a plasma bolt. The humans hadn't just gotten lucky at Mars. They had been preparing for this moment for generations. Their apparent weakness was their greatest deception. While we saw a fragile species playing at war, they had been perfecting it. Sir, Officer Nexus called out. You should see their response to natural disasters. When their planet strikes them with hurricanes, they build stronger cities. Earthquakes? Better building techniques. Plagues? Advanced medicine. Every catastrophe makes them more resilient. I drafted my report to Commander Thorne with trembling hands. How could I make him understand what we had discovered? This wasn't just about military capability. We had stumbled upon a species that had turned adversity itself into an art form. The humans, I wrote, have evolved not despite their weaknesses, but because of them. Every limitation they face becomes a problem to solve, every defeat a lesson to learn, every setback a catalyst for advancement. They don't just survive, they reimagine survival itself. The Federation had made a fundamental error. We had mistaken physical frailty for weakness, never understanding that humans had transcended their biological limitations generations ago. They didn't need natural armor, they had spent thousands of years learning to break it. They didn't need biological weapons, they had mastered the art of turning technology itself into a weapon. We hadn't started a war with a primitive species. We had awakened a sleeping giant that had been preparing for this moment since they first looked up at the stars and wondered what threats might lurk in the darkness of space. The Battle of Proxima Centauri would become the defining moment of the war. Our fleet of 5,000 ships represented the largest military force the Federation had ever assembled. Commander Thorn himself led the attack, determined to crush the human resistance once and for all. "This time we are prepared for their tricks," he announced across the command channel. "This time we show them true power." The humans waited for us with a fleet barely a third our size, but now we knew better than to take comfort in numbers. At their head was a new vessel, twice the size of their previous ships, bristling with weapons we couldn't even identify. "Federation forces," a new voice cut through our communications. "This is Captain Marcus Rodriguez of the EDF Prometheus. You are outnumbered." Laughter erupted across our bridge. Even I couldn't help but snort. "Captain Rodriguez, your mathematical skills seem lacking." "Numbers," Rodriguez replied, "are just another weakness we've learned to overcome." The battle began with a maneuver so brazen it bordered on insanity. The Prometheus charged straight at our center line, seemingly intent on suicide. Our ships opened fire, enough firepower to vaporize a small moon. Then we learned what the humans had been building in secret. The space around the Prometheus rippled, twisted, and suddenly we were firing at ourselves. They had mastered quantum mirroring technology, turning our own weapons against us. Hundreds of our ships were destroyed before we could cease fire. "All ships, hold fire," Commander Thorn bellowed. "Switch to targeted pulse." His words were cut short as the human fleet executed their next move. The smaller ships that we had dismissed as escorts suddenly linked together, forming massive energy webs between them. They had turned their entire fleet into a single, interconnected weapons platform. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Rodriguez's voice was filled with pride. "We call it the neural net. Your intelligence suggested we were building bigger ships. Instead, we made our ships work together, like a human nervous system." The neural net pulsed with energy, and I watched in horror as hundreds of our ships simply shut down, their systems corrupted by what appeared to be a technological virus that spread through space itself. "Lieutenant Brightclaw," I called out. "Analysis, sir. They're using our own communication networks against us. Every ship we lose adds to their processing power. They're not just destroying us, they're assimilating our technology." Commander Thorn's voice shook with rage. "Launch the planet crackers. Reduce their fleet to atoms." Our super weapons deployed, massive constructs designed to shatter worlds. The humans had no defense against such power, or so we thought. The Prometheus split apart, its hull separating into dozens of smaller ships, each carrying a piece of its core technology. As our planet crackers approached, these fragments darted between them, attaching themselves like parasites. "Fun fact about humans," Rodriguez transmitted. "We're really good at turning our enemy's strengths against them." The planet crackers turned, their immense power now under human control, and began targeting our own fleet. The battle deteriorated into chaos as our own superweapons carved paths of destruction through our formations. "Status report," Commander Thorn demanded. "Sir," I responded, my voice hollow. "We've lost 60% of the fleet. Their neural net is adapting faster than we can develop countermeasures. The Prometheus fragments are. Sir, they're rebuilding themselves using debris from our destroyed ships." "Signal the retreat," Commander Thorn ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. "All ships, emergency withdrawal." As our battered fleet turned to flee, Captain Rodriguez transmitted one final message. "Next time you want to test humanity's strength, remember this: we don't need natural armor when we can turn space itself into our shield. We don't need biological weapons when we can transform your own technology into our sword. And we don't need numbers when we have each other." The Battle of Proxima Centauri lasted less than 6 hours. In that time, humanity didn't just defeat us, they revolutionized the very nature of space warfare. They showed us that true strength lies not in individual power, but in the ability to adapt, cooperate, and turn apparent weakness into unprecedented strength. The boarding of Commander Thorne's flagship marked the war's final hours. I stood in the command center, watching as human breach pods latched onto our hull like mechanical parasites. Our internal defenses, the pride of Federation engineering, fell silent one by one. "Let them come," Commander Thorne growled, his battle armor gleaming. "Let's see how strong they are without their precious technology." The first explosion rocked the command deck. Through the smoke stepped Captain Rodriguez, leading a team of human warriors in powered combat suits. They looked almost primitive compared to our natural armor and enhanced physiology. "Last chance to surrender," Commander Rodriguez announced, his visor retracting to show his face. Such a soft, vulnerable species, yet his eyes held no fear. Commander Thorne responded with a barrage of plasma fire. The humans scattered, moving with impossible speed and coordination. Their suits, we realized too late, were neural linked. They fought as one organism, each soldier instinctively covering the other's movements. "Take them down," Thorne ordered. Our elite guards charged forward, expecting to crush these fragile creatures in close combat. The humans let us come. That was their first trick. They wanted us close. At point-blank range, their supposed weakness became their greatest strength. While we relied on brute force, they used our momentum against us. Centuries of human martial arts, perfected in powered armor, turned our superior strength into a liability. I watched in disbelief as Rodriguez traded blows with Commander Thorne. The human was half his size, even in armor, yet he moved like water around our leader's attacks. Every missed strike left Thorne more exposed, more vulnerable. "You still don't understand, do you?" Rodriguez said, dodging another blow. "Strength isn't about having the biggest guns or the toughest armor." A human female, her suit marked with combat medic symbols, was hit by plasma fire. Instead of falling, she injected something into her suit. Her vital signs, which we could detect through our sensors, went haywire. She fought even harder. "Your kind sees pain as weakness," Rodriguez continued, landing a precision strike that cracked Thorne's armor. "We see it as fuel." The battle moved through the ship's corridors. Everywhere, the same scene played out. Our soldiers, superior in every physical way, found themselves outmaneuvered by humans who simply refused to acknowledge their limitations. The final blow came when Rodriguez breached Thorne's defenses. Instead of a killing strike, he disabled our commander's armor with a targeted electromagnetic pulse. Strength. Rodriguez stood over the fallen commander. True strength is getting up when everything tells you to stay down. It's finding a way forward when every path seems blocked. It's turning weakness into opportunity. Looking around at my defeated comrades, I finally understood. We had spent millennia evolving natural weapons and armor. The humans, denied such gifts by nature, had turned their entire existence into one continuous act of defiance against their limitations. They were never weak. They had simply been waiting for an enemy worthy of showing their true strength. The Treaty of Seoul marked more than just peace. It announced humanity's arrival as a galactic power. Commander Thorne's surrender became a watershed moment in Federation history. For the first time, we added a species not for their natural strengths, but for their ability to transcend natural limitations. I now serve as the Federation's ambassador to Earth, a position that reminds me daily of our near-fatal mistake. From my office in New Singapore, I watch human children playing in gravity fields that would crush most species. Their parents work in environments we once thought uninhabitable. Their scientists unlock secrets we never thought to explore. The humans didn't just defeat us, they changed us. The Federation's military doctrine underwent a complete transformation. We learned that true power lies not in natural advantages, but in the drive to overcome natural barriers. Last week, Admiral Blake invited me to observe their academy graduation. Young officers from 100 worlds trained alongside humans, learning to turn their unique limitations into unexpected strengths. Captain Rodriguez, now their head instructor, has a saying: the greatest weapon is the one your enemy thinks is a weakness. The humans call it adaptation. We call it revolution. To any species discovering humanity for the first time, heed this warning: do not look at their fragile forms and see weakness. Look at their cities, built in defiance of natural disasters. Look at their ships, forged in the shadow of extinction. Look at their history, written in the language of overcoming impossible odds. They are not weak. They were never weak. They are human, and they have redefined what strength means in our galaxy. End report. Ambassador Krex Starweaver, Galactic Federation.